Hi again, everybody. It's really good to have you with us here again today. This is another fantastic Mum Predict webinar on journeys in patient and public involvement and engagement. And today we're very fortunate to have with us Ngawai Moss, who is one of the lay co-investigators on the Mum Predict project. She's done lots of really interesting work before she's come to Mum Predict and had a really interesting journey. So yeah, we're really glad she could join us. So Ngawai, over to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Rachel. Yeah, so I'm going to give you a bit of an outline of my experience working with the National Institute of Health Research as a panel member. So before I start, just some background. So I've been working, I stepped down last year and I worked for 5 years with NIHR as part of the panel. It's been amazing. And I just want to share a little bit about that journey with you. So just to recap, just take a step back. So NIHR, many of you will know, but it's the UK's National Institute for Health Research, and it's the funder in the UK, and it's the largest one with investment of 1.2 billion. So it's huge, and it funds high quality research that's to benefit the NHS and the public health and social care. And because it's public money, it is really important that the public voice is integrated into it. So it partners with patients and the public to ensure that research is relevant. So within the NIHR, there's different programs of work that focus on different areas. So there's different funding streams, and I was part of one of them, a program grants for applied research, about halfway down through there. And within that panel and many panels, it's made up of people from NIHR that facilitate and experts that are recruited from throughout the UK of multiple disciplines, and that includes patient and public involvement. I'll put PPI, but patient public involvement. And basically, the panels will review funding applications from researchers, and we'll read them, we'll consider them, and we'll feedback on them. And in addition to that, there are panel meetings where we review all the documents in advance. We'll summarize them as part of the panel, and we'll discuss them. And through that discussion, we'll look at what was good about it, what was maybe not so good or might need to be improved. And then we'll vote on the application. And depending on the score, depends on whether that research is funded or not funded. So from me, as a bit of background, I started off in patient public involvement because I was a participant on a study when I was pregnant. And through that participation, when that study finished, I was invited to do some patient and public involvement work on that study. And that just led on to other patient and public involvement experiences stemming from there. Where I was motivated from was a point of I'd just had my second child. By this point, I actually had volunteered a lot in the patient public involvement space, and I'd been looking after elderly in-laws, and I just felt like I needed a change from a full-time job, commuting, having 2 children and wanting to spend time with my children, the ability to care for in-laws, and just your priorities just change. So when I applied, they ask you about, a bit about you. So I told them a bit about my employment and my voluntary positions, just where you're coming from, again about your motivation, and blending sort of my healthcare interests with my patient public involvement interests with actually caring responsibilities, and just that I actually like doing it. And then also, when I apply, they ask you about sort of what else you bring. And for me was the lived experience of dealing with children, of being a woman with chronic condition. I was part of a patient group at the GP practice, and all of that gives you, it's not just you coming, but it gives them more tangible strength to when you speak about something, you can speak with conviction. And then other broader life experiences. I've been on another committee for British standards as part of my work, my work previously, and so I did have experience of assessing difficult and complex documents. I think the NIHR panel I applied for, program grants, is quite a full-on program. I didn't know this at the time. I just thought, oh, that sounds interesting, I'll apply to that. But on reflection, it's probably people might go to a different panel and then go to program grants. That's what I found when I joined. And even if you haven't been on it, you just need to, it's quite intense program. So I loved it, but just bear that in mind if you do want to apply for that. So as a pathway, so I filled out my funding application, my sort of, it's like a job application, I suppose, where all those things, you put that into a form, and then they invite you for an interview. So it's all very proper. And the interview, you have people from NIHR, you have the chair, and you would have another patient and public involvement person who currently sits on the panel who will be there as well. And everyone just wants you to do well. So it's not to trip you up, it's just for them to get a bit of a sense about you and what your interests are. And in the interview for program grants, they actually give you a redacted funding application. So they might ask you questions about that funding application. So you do have to prepare a little bit for it. And then, if you pass the interview, then the first stage is for you to observe a panel in action. So you actually get a sense of what it is that's sort of expected of you, I suppose, what you're going to be doing. Which is really interesting. It's a bit frustrating because you can't speak, you want to speak, but then you get the opportunity when you start assessing the funding applications properly, and that means doing reviews and also going to the panel meetings. And it's an experience. You in the panels, there might be, I don't know, there's quite a lot of different experts, and you represent the patient voice, so you're there to stand up for patients and the public. So after 5 years, I assessed for program grants 63. I did 63 reviews, and I also, being part of the panel also enables you other opportunities within NIHR. So for example, when COVID struck, I was asked to review funding applications for COVID related, so very rapid turnaround for those. And sometimes you might get asked to review a funding application from a different program if it's in an area of interest for you. So I've been asked to review things about children, for instance. And yeah, so this is just some funding applications, but actually I've done more than this just from being on that panel. So the types of things that I've assessed and that actually have got funded have been very broad range. I mean, that's one of the good things of being on the panel. You see everything, or not everything, but it feels like you see everything, and you learn all kinds of different things about, health conditions that you wouldn't even know, and you'd never necessarily have access to. So some of the things, just to give you range, around mental health and neurological condition. So something about pain, child and adolescent musculoskeletal pain, things like depression, psychosis, even rare conditions as well, neurological conditions, all the way through to chronic diseases like cystic fibrosis or HIV and dementia. Healthcare practice as well. So things like shift work sleep disorders for NHS workers, stroke care, end of life care, and also infection and oncology. I put some examples there from sexually transmitted infections. Definitely remember that one. Acne, neck and head cancer. So this isn't everything, but these are some of the ones that got funded. And it's really interesting because no funding application is the same or even similar. Like they're all very, very different. So just as like a big picture view, I think one is you get really good experience, and I'll give you a bit, I'll dive deeper into that. But also from being on the panel, you get lots of other opportunities that you wouldn't normally have access to as a patient public involvement, or just as a normal person of the public, really. And they're interesting. So from how my involvement made a difference for me, I think, professionally, it was really important because I decided that I wanted to do patient public involvement work after my second child, just for the flexibility and enjoyment. And so this enabled me to learn even though I had a good base, but to learn much deeper about research and about dynamics that you maybe not normally aware of. I mean, whoever knew that certain disciplines even existed before I was on this panel, things like health economists, I would never even know that those disciplines existed, but they sit on the panel because the panels have to be very holistic and represent lots of different disciplines. I made really good networks. I was able to contribute to patient public involvement. And generally, you expand your awareness and how you view this work. And then you also feel quite proud because it's like, oh, look, I'm on a panel. Yeah. And I didn't realize this when I started, but all the people that you work with on the panel are amazing. They're all like top in their fields, at least for program grants. It really felt like everyone in the room was really special. So when you're in there, you're like, oh, I must be special too, that I'm in this room with all these people. So yeah, I feel like our panel was the best panel. It really was. And I feel proud, not that I just did work for NIHR, but actually that I did work on this panel. With an amazing group of people. Our chair, they're always amazing. The leadership has always been very good, and the NIHR team as well behind the scenes. So everyone you work with. So I'm going to dive deeper a little bit into specifically things that helped me with my professional development. So one is around understanding the whole grant process. Yeah, you gain insight in a way that, even people that are writing grants don't. You also get to see how other people do patient public involvement. So what the kind of current trends are, what people are doing, which might give you ideas, but also you might be able to see gaps, things, oh, actually they could be doing something here, but they're not. And like for me, it's given me a lot of inspiration. To when I've done patient public involvement, say with Mum Predict and working with Rachel, or in other spaces, things like, oh, maybe we could try this, or shall we try that? Also, broadening horizons, so learning about other health conditions. And when you read the funding applications, at least for program grants, they're because you're looking at funding of probably £2.5+ million, they're very meticulous and thorough. And if they've done good patient public involvement, you get a bit of a sense of the types of issues that different health conditions are experiencing. And that's maybe something that you normally wouldn't be so exposed about, because normally you know about your experiences and you're speaking about your experiences, or you might know about people who have similar experiences. So for me, for instance, it might be the experience of pregnancy, yeah, and then all of a sudden you're working with other women who have experience of pregnancy. So then you're kind of maybe amplifying the voice, but you might not get access, or not access, but you might not understand what it might be like for someone who has a different experience and condition. If they're going through agonizing pain every day because of their condition, that might be something that you can't relate to so much. So reading it, you sometimes can really get a sense of that in the applications. You also get an understanding of the National Institute of Health Research. In the UK, lots of researchers apply there because it's a big pot of money and it funds lots of different types of work. And that can be quite valuable when you're liaising with researchers, because you've seen way more funding applications than they've seen. So actually, you can guide them a bit better, I suppose. And just as a default, you learn about the Department of Health priorities, and things like understanding different focuses. Like I put equality, diversity, and inclusion, but anything that's important from Department of Health does tend to trickle through. Which again is helpful when you're dealing with other researchers. I know I've spent time with early career researchers, and you can give them a bit more of a steer on things they need to put in their funding applications, or preparatory work that they need to do. Or even I can explain to them how the process works. I know people that I've spoken to have actually applied for money from our program based on conversations with me, for example. You also learn about writing applications. So even though you don't write the applications yourself, you read them, and you read lots of them. And actually most of them are very good. So you learn about, when you're reviewing it, you learn about the things that you think, oh yeah, that's good, that's good. So then when you write a funding application, you can make sure you include the things that are good, or avoid the things that aren't good, because equally, when you're reading the funding applications, you're looking for gaps. It's like, they haven't done this, or why is this like this, or they haven't considered this. Yeah. So yeah, if you're writing, it's helped me sort of contribute to future funding applications and help write them, just being on the other side of it. And interdisciplinary collaboration. So I suppose what I said before is like learning about different disciplines and different types of jobs that there are in research, and how they interact with each other as well, has been really interesting. And the other thing as well is that sometimes, yeah, no, it's been very interesting. Okay, so expanding networks. So just from being part of the panel, you get to meet, like I said, super, super top experts in their fields, and they're like leaders in their fields, really. And from then, I've managed to be involved in other pieces of research through meeting people in those panels. Collaborating, so not just being part of the team, but also being part of steering groups where someone knows who you are, like maybe not really that well, but they know who you are, and they might invite you to do something else. NIHR initiatives, so I'll tell you a bit more about that, but for example, things that I've done thinking about the review process, we've tweaked the review processes. We've one thing that I'm really proud of was around this new sort of funding call that we've done. I'll tell you a bit more about that later. And then, because people at NIHR, there are opportunities potentially to collaborate. So one interesting opportunity was during COVID, and I was working separately from NIHR on a series of webinars for health professionals, but also the public, around COVID and pregnancy and how to manage it. And one of the webinars was on research. So I asked someone from NIHR to come and speak about research, and these webinars were global. So it was a really interesting dynamic. And if I hadn't known, if I hadn't been on the panel, I wouldn't have even thought to involve them, or even who to ask. Active participation, yeah, so you get to be involved in different activities and events as well. So that's been, it boosts your confidence, it helps your understanding, and it expands your network as well. Okay, so this slide, sorry there's so much text, but on this slide I just wanted to give you a sense of how being on a panel has influenced sort of research. So firstly, the feedback that you give as a reviewer, or even stemming from the panel, but means that you can influence the direction of research, and because you can give feedback and then they have to act on that feedback. Yeah. Or you have a vote, so you can vote in the panel whether it should get funded or not. And I know there's been times that it has made a difference. It's difficult because there's lots of experts on the panel, and in order for it to get funded, everyone needs to vote quite high on it. Yeah. And there's only 2 patient public involvement people on each panel meeting. But if it's borderline, I really believe that you can swing it one way or another. So I know there's definitely things that have been funded that might not have been funded if I hadn't been on that panel, if I hadn't spoken up for those funding applications potentially. Also, you can improve patient public involvement practices. So this has so happened, yeah. When I've given feedback, things like you haven't costed in enough money to do what you said you're going to do, and then they come back and they add like a big chunk of money more, and that that's only happened because you've given them feedback on it. Things like, you might be able to advise on small details. So they might want very frail people to come into hospital to do something related to their research, but they're expecting them to go on public transport, for example. And one piece of feedback you could say is, well, actually, that might not really be that practical. Are there other ways you can do this? Or can you pay for a taxi? Like, give them a bit of inspiration on, constructive feedback, I suppose. And also you can sort of champion patients and research that addresses their needs directly. So every person that reviews it, every other expert, they're looking at it from their angle, and you're looking at it from a very patient sort of centric perspective. Is this important? Why does it matter? Is it, is the way the research is designed, is that feasible, practical? You don't always know, but you can even ask the question and then they need to reply. So but generally the applications are quite well written, so you get a good sense. Before a panel, if there's an application that I really, really like, I will properly prepare so that when I go in, I can make sure it gets funded. I don't always get my way, but I can really stick up for it. And I know there's been times when, because I really stuck up for it, they've said, well, actually, let's invite them to reapply. At this stage, we'll give them some feedback and we'll ask them to reapply and see. And then they've reapplied, and even I have to reflect that it was a much better funding application, and then it did get funded. So making sure you're prepared is for the things that really you think are really strong. And yeah, I think it's really, I don't know, it's difficult to quantify. But I know myself from lots of different things I've done that I've definitely had an impact. So this one here is something I'm super, super proud of. So this was a funding call that we developed as part of program grants alongside other people in NIHR as well. So it wasn't just us, but, it was really having the right idea at the right time with all the right people around us, and our program grants team was amazing. I mean, the NIHR as well, but the team was really good, and we developed this funding call, which was £500,000 offered for sort of seed projects, which was around building relationships and partnerships, which hopefully will develop into research further on. And it was £500,000 over 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and the first year was amazing. We had so many good applications that we actually ended up funding £2 million worth. It was that good. So I don't know, I'm really proud of this, and I know that it's only the beginning, but those small projects will lead to further research that would never have happened otherwise, will be really grounded in what people actually think that is important to them. And then personal growth for me, so I suppose just honed in my analysis skills, because you have to be really when you're looking at these documents, you do have to be pretty meticulous. Being able to write and give feedback in a constructive way, it's very rewarding. It's been really rewarding, but very, very hard work. I'm not going to lie, that it's been hard work. But, and then you can be an advocate and a champion for patients as well. And just a couple of examples to just bring it full circle. So this is a study on pregnancy and epilepsy and improving safety and thinking about children longer term. And this is based on my study that, or not based, but a big component on this is based on my study that I was that I mentioned right at the beginning that I was a participant in. And being on the NIHR panel really gave me the confidence to bring everyone together into the room and develop this over, you know, like 18 months, put a really strong funding application through, and actually it has got funded and we've launched, so which is amazing. And that picture of me is at the House of Lords when we were launching it. So this, I feel like this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't been on the panel. Even just having the confidence and being able to put, you know, to really strongly advocate. And then this here, Bridge. So Bridge is a global commission that has been set up around advocating for better research, information and data generation for empowerment. So for women with chronic conditions, there's lots of gaps, and this is a really important initiative. It's multidisciplinary and it's happening globally. And being on the NIHR panel has helped kind of given me confidence that actually I can do this with a whole lot of other experts in the field. And coming back to Mum Predict, my connections through Mum Predict, some of the women have been able to feed back into the work of the Bridge Commission. That's been amazing because it means that women with multiple health conditions can be represented on a more international scale. So that's kind of like full circle, I suppose. A whistle-stop tour of me and my experience being on a panel for the National Institute of Health Research. If anyone is interested, please get in touch with NIHR. They're amazing. It's been amazing. It's hard work, though. I'm not like that. It is hard work, but it's been an amazing experience. Thank you. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, Ngawai. That was amazing. I'm wanting to go and apply myself now. It sounds absolutely fascinating. Thanks for joining us, and hopefully we'll have some questions later. Thank you.
Thank you.